What would you do if your plate carried a card? It said 2 words. Charity case. The room laughed. Glasses clinked, whispers spread, and someone pointed at me. A waiter glanced down at the card and shook his head. Laughter rolled through the hall until it drowned out the music. My wife sat nearby, but not by my side. She sat with Dalton, the rich man in a perfect suit. His watch gleamed brighter than the lights above our table. She leaned close when he poured her another glass of champagne. She smiled at him, not once looking at me. Her mother nodded, pleased with what she was seeing. She had always wanted this, always pushed Emily toward him. She whispered something to a cousin, and they both smirked. My son sat across the table, staring down at his plate. His fists were tight, his eyes fixed on the floor. He wanted me to speak, to say something, anything. But I stayed silent. 2 days earlier, I had signed papers for a trailer. $200 for a wreck no one else would touch. The floor sagged, the roof leaked, and the walls reeked of mold. The seller laughed and said, "Burn it, that's all it's worth." I signed anyway, and he shook his head at me. Neighbors saw the trailer arrive and gathered outside to watch. "Harrison brings trash again," one of them shouted to another. "Build him a statue at the dump," another voice added. One woman filmed on her phone and shared it in a chat. I saw her typing, laughing as the screen lit her face. They laughed together, loud enough for Jason to hear. He stood beside me, 12 years old but already stubborn. His shirt was covered in dust, sweat ran across his forehead. "Dad, are we really going to live in this?" "No," I told him without looking up from the papers. "Then why?" he pressed, eyes waiting for an answer. "To raise it. To make it ours," I said firmly. I remembered another day, almost 1 year earlier. Emily closed the door and spoke words that never left me. "I need a man who earns, not one who fixes junk." Then she picked up her bag and walked toward Dalton's car. I stayed behind with Jason and a pile of debts. Her mother stood across the street, watching from her open window. Neighbors passed by and shook their heads as if they knew. Months before, I had gone to her asking for help. Money, a chance, just a little to start a workshop. She looked at me coldly and shook her head. "Business isn't for you, Michael. You'll always smell like grease." She turned me away, and soon enough I went bankrupt. They laughed then too, her and her daughter together. Now she saw the trailer parked in front of my house. She smirked and said, "Here's your empire, Michael. Rust and nails." That evening Emily came again, driving her brand new SUV. Dalton sat in the passenger seat, smiling as she parked. She stepped out, her heels sinking slightly into the dirt. She looked at the trailer and burst out laughing. $200? This is your palace now?" she asked. "Even in poverty, you still manage to collect trash." Her voice cut deep, but I didn't let it show. Dalton smirked quietly, saying nothing but enjoying every second. Jason clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. I placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Quiet." That night, I sat inside the trailer alone. Rain came through the roof and dripped onto the floor. I heard voices outside, neighbors talking behind the fence. "He'll never fix it. Poor kid stuck with a useless father." I lay down on the broken couch and closed my eyes. Silence pressed harder than the leaking roof above me. Later that week, I stopped at the hardware store for supplies. 2 men near the counter saw me and started whispering. "Harrison spent $200 on a coffin, not a trailer. More rats inside than friends outside," the other one replied. The cashier laughed with them as he rang up my nails. I paid without speaking and carried the bag out the door. A week later, Jason and I began pulling the walls apart. Rotten boards fell away, dust filled the air, and rust clung to everything. We tossed out old cans, broken toys, and bags of trash. For Jason it was fun, a game of discovery. For me it was a chance, maybe the last one I had. That evening he stopped and knocked hard against the wall. "Dad, listen," he said, pressing his ear against the wood. The sound was hollow, different from the rest of the boards. We grabbed a crowbar and pried the wall open together. Behind it we found a heavy metal box, rusted shut. Jason held the flashlight steady while I forced the lock. Inside were envelopes, yellow with age and marked with stamps. I pulled one out and unfolded the fragile sheet inside. It began, "My dearest, the war grows worse every day." The ink was faded, the words heavy even after decades. Under the letters we found coins, stacked tightly at the bottom. They were heavy, solid, and they still shined in the dark. Jason lifted one, his voice shaking as he held it up. "Dad, this is gold. Real gold." We sat on the floor with the box between us. Jason held the coin while I unfolded another letter. Names. Dates. Places. 1943. Outside, neighbors laughed. Emily laughed. Her mother laughed. I didn't. The coin was heavy, and the silence heavier still. Jason turned it in his hand and whispered to me, "Is it real, Dad?" I closed the box and covered it again with boards. "Not yet," I told him, and he didn't ask more. The next morning, I stepped outside and found eyes on me. Neighbors stood by the fence, whispering, phones pointed at the trailer. One woman zoomed in, filming while her child laughed beside her. "Look at him," she said loudly. "Raising his boy in garbage." Her voice carried clear enough for Jason to hear inside. He froze when he came out, his face turning red. I told him nothing, just walked past them and stayed silent. At the store that afternoon, the whispers came again. Two clerks leaned close, talking loud enough for me to hear. "Harrison's Palace," one said, laughing. $200 for a coffin. "More rats than guests," the other answered, smirking at my bag of nails. The cashier chuckled too as he counted the screws I bought. I paid, held Jason by the shoulder, and walked away. He looked up at me as if waiting for something. A word, a defense, maybe even anger. But I gave him none of those. Silence was heavier than all the bags I carried. That night the phone rang, Emily's number glowing on the screen. Her voice cut through the static, sharp enough to pierce skin. "I saw your palace," she said. "Dalton laughed all evening." "So did I. Jason deserves better than rust and garbage." Her words hit like nails through my chest, but I didn't react. Jason stood in the corner, hearing every word she spat. I stayed silent until she hung up without saying goodbye. Jason clenched his fists again, the way he always did. He wanted me to fight back, to shout, to prove something. I gave him the same answer as before, nothing at all. The next day, her mother crossed the street with purpose. She knocked on the trailer wall until dust rained from the beams. "Michael," she called, her voice loud enough for the neighbors. "Stop this circus. Do you want my grandson to grow like you? Poor. Dirty. A failure?" Jason stepped forward, fist shaking, ready to shout at her. I grabbed his wrist and held it steady until he stopped. She leaned in, perfume strong, smile cruel. "I warned Emily. I told her you'd never succeed. And here you are. Rust. Nails. Silence." She left, her laugh following her across the street. That night Jason sat by the box, holding the coin again. "They don't know," he whispered. "They don't see." I opened one of the letters carefully, the paper crumbling in my hands. The ink was faded, but I read it slowly to myself. "My dearest, the days grow colder here in France. I dream of you and pray I'll return to hold our son. If this letter finds you, know I am still alive." The words shook more than the coin in Jason's hand. He watched me fold it back and place it in the box. "Why don't we tell them?" he asked. "Because silence remembers," I said. 2 days later, Dalton's truck pulled into the dirt driveway. The engine roared as if it had something to prove. Emily sat beside him, perfect hair and a wide smile. She looked out the window at the trailer and laughed. Dalton stepped out, adjusting his watch before speaking. "Michael, you make it too easy. $200 for this? You gave her rust, I gave her a life." Emily laughed harder, hand pressed to his shoulder. Jason's face turned crimson, and his fist shook again. I placed a hand on his arm and whispered, "Quiet." Dalton smirked as if victory already belonged to him. "Come on, Emily," he said, turning back to the truck. "Garbage stinks, and so does the man who owns it." They drove off, leaving tire marks and laughter behind them. That evening Jason stared at the coins, his hands trembling. "What do we do with it, Dad?" he asked quietly. "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." He stared longer, eyes burning with questions he didn't ask. "They think we're nothing," he whispered. I didn't correct him. I let him believe they did. At the diner the following morning, heads turned when I walked in. A table of men in work boots leaned close and laughed. "Trailer man," one said, loud enough to echo across the room. "Charity case," the other added, grinning at my worn jacket. The waitress looked down when she placed my coffee. It was cold before I even touched it. I left the money on the table and walked out. Jason followed me, his face tight, his steps too fast. "Dad, why don't you fight back? Why do you just stand there?" I didn't answer him then. I only walked. Back inside the trailer, Jason spread the coins across the floor. His small hands trembled as he placed each one in a row. "They'll never believe us unless we show them," he insisted. I shook my head and closed the box again. "Not yet," I repeated, my voice low and final. Jason looked at me like he didn't recognize the silence. "They think we're nothing," he said again, louder this time. I looked back at him, then at the box in my hands. "Let them think it," I said. "Silence waits." Their laughter filled the night. Jason's fist shook. I told him to wait. Morning came slow, and with it, new whispers outside. Jason stepped out first, carrying a bag of trash. Across the fence, neighbors leaned close, pretending not to stare. One of them spoke just loud enough for me to hear. "They say Harrison found something inside the walls. Coins, maybe. Letters. Who knows?" Another one laughed. "If he did, he'll waste it like everything else." Jason froze, his small hands gripping the trash bag tighter. He wanted to answer them, but I shook my head. We walked back inside without a word. Later that afternoon, a man in a pickup slowed down. He rolled his window down, eyes sharp on the trailer. "Heard you pulled something out of the walls," he said. I didn't answer, just kept walking toward the door. "Better be careful," he added. "Things like that attract people." Then he drove off, his engine louder than his warning. Jason looked at me, worry clear on his face. "Dad, how do they know?" "We didn't tell anyone." I didn't reply. Silence was the only shield we had. Inside, the box sat hidden beneath a loose board. Jason pulled it out again, coins clinking against the wood. He spread them in rows, touching each one carefully. "Dad, if people already know, shouldn't we just show them?" I shook my head. "Not yet." His voice cracked with frustration. "They treat us like garbage. They laugh every day. Why can't we use this to shut them up?" I leaned down, closing the lid firmly in his hands. "Because timing matters," I said. "And silence is stronger than noise." That evening, we worked on the trailer until dark. Jason carried boards heavier than his arms could handle. His face was covered in dust, sweat running into his eyes. He refused to stop, even when his hands shook. When night came, we sat on the floor beside the box. Jason held a letter, reading slowly, stumbling over the words. "My dearest Anna, the days grow darker here in France. I pray to God this war will end, and I'll come home. Tell our boy I think of him every night." Jason's voice broke on the last line. He folded the letter, holding it close to his chest. "They wrote this to survive," he whispered. "And we just sit here while they laugh at us." I didn't take the letter from him. I let him hold it. I let him feel the weight. 2 nights later, I heard footsteps outside the trailer. A knock rattled the door, then another, harder this time. "Michael, open up," A voice called. It was Dalton. I opened the door, and he stood there smirking. Emily waited in the truck, arms crossed, watching closely. Word spreads fast, he said. People say you found treasure. His eyes flicked to the floor behind me, searching. I didn't move, didn't blink. There's nothing here, I said. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Even if there is, Michael, you'd waste it. You always waste everything. Jason stood behind me, fists clenched so tight they shook. Dalton saw him, smirked wider, and turned back to the truck. Emily laughed before they drove away. The next morning, the whispers grew louder around town. At the diner, a man tapped the counter and said, Harrison found gold. That's what I heard. Another answered, Gold? That man? He'd sell it for beer. They laughed so hard even the waitress joined in. Jason sat next to me, face burning with anger. Why don't you tell them it's real? Why not show them? I stirred my coffee and set the spoon down slowly. Because silence lasts longer than noise, I said again. Back at the trailer, Jason slammed his hands on the box. His voice was louder now, stronger than before. I'm tired of silence, Dad. I want them to know. I looked at him, the boy I raised, the anger in his eyes. They'll know, I told him. But not yet. He turned away, muttering words I didn't catch. The box sat heavy between us, full of letters and coins. Outside, the laughter grew louder, closer, and sharper. Rumors spread faster than truth. Jason wanted to scream. I stayed silent. The rumors didn't stop. They grew louder, sharper, harder to ignore. At the diner, voices carried across every booth. Harrison's hiding gold in that trash trailer. He'll drink it away, like his father before him. Someone laughed so hard he spilled coffee across the table. The waitress looked at me and shook her head. Jason heard every word, his jaw tight, his shoulders stiff. I stirred my coffee once and set the spoon down. We stood up before finishing, leaving bills under the cup. That night, I came back to the trailer after work. The porch light across the street was already on. Her mother stood outside, arms crossed, waiting for me. She didn't lower her voice when I walked past. You think people don't know? Everyone knows. Gold. Letters. Treasure. And you? You'll waste it. Her laugh spread across the street like smoke. Jason opened the trailer door and froze, listening to her. His hand shook on the handle, but I pushed him inside. Quiet, I said. Inside, Jason grabbed the box and opened it again. The coins clinked, shining under the weak light bulb above us. Dad, we can't just hide this anymore, he whispered. They already know. They'll keep coming until they take it. I looked at him, sweat still on his face from the day. His shirt was torn, dust covered his arms, but his eyes burned. They laugh at us because they think we're nothing, he said. This box proves we're not. I closed the lid and set it back under the boards. Not yet, I repeated. We wait. Jason's face twisted in frustration, but he didn't argue again. The next day, Dalton came back. His truck pulled in hard, dirt spitting under the tires. Emily sat in the passenger seat, smiling wider than before. He stepped out slow, adjusting his tie like it mattered. Michael, he said, loud enough for neighbors to hear. You're a stubborn man. People talk. They say you found treasure. He took a step closer, his shoes sinking in the dirt. Now, treasure like that belongs in the right hands. Not yours. Emily laughed from the truck, her voice sharp as glass. You should give it to someone who knows what to do. Dalton builds, Michael. You ruin. It's always been that way. Jason stepped forward, fists clenched so hard his knuckles whitened. His breathing was heavy, his eyes locked on Dalton. I put my arm across his chest and pushed him back. Dalton smirked, leaning close enough to smell his cologne. You'll lose it, Michael. Like you've lost everything else. Then he turned, stepping back toward his truck. Come on, Emily. Let's leave him with his rust. The engine roared, dust rising as they drove away. Their laughter stayed long after the sound of tires faded. That night, Jason refused to sleep. He sat by the box, coins spread across the floor. He ran his fingers over them, one by one, in silence. Finally, he looked at me and spoke. Dad, I can't take this anymore. Every day they laugh. Every night they whisper. We have proof. Why don't we use it? I looked at him, his face half in shadow, half in light. You think proof changes them? I asked. They don't want proof. They want us small. Jason's voice cracked. Then when do we stop being small? I didn't answer. The silence was enough. Later, I stepped outside for air, the night heavy around me. Voices drifted across the fence, low but clear. Heard it's in the floorboards. Gold coins. Maybe thousands. He doesn't deserve it. Should have been ours. I stood there listening, my hand tight on the railing. The shadows moved on the other side, their laughter following. Inside, Jason was still awake, still staring at the box. He looked up at me as I walked back in. They won't stop, Dad. Not until we show them. I sat down, eyes fixed on the floor, voice steady. They'll stop. But not like you think. Jason wanted to reveal. The neighbors wanted to steal. Dalton wanted to own. I wanted silence. And silence waited. By morning, the whispers turned into something sharper. They weren't just rumors anymore. They were plans. At the diner, I heard it clear this time. He hides it in the floorboards. Gold coins, old letters, worth a fortune. Someone should just take it before he ruins it. Jason heard too, his fork clattering against the plate. He looked at me, waiting for words that never came. I paid the bill and left before the waitress brought coffee. When we got back, two neighbors stood by the fence. They weren't whispering now, they were arguing. It's his. He found it, one said. Doesn't matter, the other snapped. He'll waste it. We should act. Jason froze in the driveway, fists clenched. He wanted to shout, to defend me. I touched his arm and shook my head. Quiet, I whispered. Their eyes followed us as we stepped inside. That night, Emily called again. Her voice was colder than before, sharp as glass. Michael, people are talking. Dalton says you're hiding treasure. If you don't handle it right, they'll come for it. But you can still fix this. Give it to Dalton. He knows how to protect things. You don't. Her laugh carried through the phone, clear enough for Jason to hear. He slammed his fist on the table, eyes burning. Dad, why do you let her talk like that? I hung up without answering. Silence filled the trailer heavier than the coins in the box. 2 days later, Dalton came back, this time not alone. 2 men climbed out of his truck, standing behind him. Emily stayed inside, watching with a smile that never faded. Dalton walked closer, slow, confident, like he already won. Michael, he said, his voice carrying across the dirt lot. Everyone knows. You found something. Something big. You don't deserve it. You'll waste it. Hand it over. Jason stepped forward before I could stop him. His voice cracked, louder than I'd ever heard it. You don't own us. You don't own my dad. Dalton smirked, tilting his head toward the men behind him. You hear that? The boy thinks trash makes him a king. The men laughed, and Jason shook with rage. I pulled him back, my arm firm across his chest. Dalton's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push further. Think about it, Michael, he said, stepping backward. Before someone else takes it without asking. Then he turned, and the truck pulled away in a storm of dust. Inside, Jason shoved the box toward me, coins spilling out. We can't wait anymore, he shouted. They're going to take it from us. Don't you see? I bent down, picking up one coin, feeling the weight. They don't take from silence, I said quietly. They only take from noise. Jason's voice broke again. Silence isn't saving us. It's killing us. He turned away, fists trembling at his sides. That evening, shadows gathered outside the trailer again. Whispers too loud to ignore drifted through the thin walls. "He's weak, the boy's weaker. Easy pickings. Tonight, maybe. Break the lock, grab the box." Jason heard every word, his eyes wild with fear and fury. He looked at me, waiting, begging for me to act. I sat still, hands folded, breath steady. Silence was the only answer I gave him. He stood then, his face red, his fist shaking. "I can't take this any more, Dad!" he shouted. "I won't be laughed at, I won't be nothing. If you won't show them, then I will." He grabbed a coin, holding it high in his hand. I stood too, catching his wrist before he could run. The coin slipped and hit the floor with a sharp clang. Jason's breath came fast, tears burning at the corners of his eyes. He looked at me as if I were the enemy. "Why, Dad? Why do you keep hiding? Why do you let them tear us apart?" I didn't answer. I let the silence speak louder than any word could. Jason wanted noise. The neighbors wanted blood. Dalton wanted control. Emily wanted proof. I wanted silence. And silence doesn't break. Jason didn't sleep that night. I could hear him shifting on the old couch, turning coins in his hands. Every clink was louder than rain dripping through the roof. By morning, his eyes were red, his jaw set tight. "Dad, we can't wait anymore," he said. "They're going to take it. They're planning it." I sat at the table, silent, watching the dust drift in the light. He slammed the coin down, the sound echoing in the trailer. "I'll show them. I'll prove we're not nothing." He left before I could stop him. I found him hours later, standing in front of the diner. The coin was in his hand, clutched tight like a weapon. He wanted to show it, to throw it in their faces. Men on the porch laughed when they saw him. "Look at the kid," one said. "He's got something shiny." Another leaned forward, smirking. Maybe Daddy finally gave him lunch money. Jason's face turned crimson. He held the coin higher, ready to speak. I stepped forward, pulling his hand down hard. The men laughed louder, slapping their knees. Jason fought my grip, his voice cracking. "Why won't you let me, Dad? Why do you keep us small?" I dragged him away, their laughter following us down the street. That evening, Emily appeared again. This time she didn't stay in the car. She walked across the dirt, heels sinking, perfume sharp. Jason stood frozen as she leaned close to him. "Your father's wasting your future," she said softly. "Dalton can give you more than silence and dust. He can give you a life. He can give you power." Jason's hands trembled, but he didn't pull away. Her words slid into him like knives. I stood in the doorway, watching, silent. Emily smirked as she turned back toward her car. "You'll see, Jason. Silence doesn't save. It kills." Then she left, her laugh echoing behind her. Later that night, Jason confronted me in the dark. "Dad, she's right. Silence isn't saving us. You don't care what happens to me. You just sit, waiting, while they destroy us." His voice cracked, his fists trembling as he spoke. He slammed the box open, coins spilling across the floor. He grabbed one letter, waving it in my face. These people fought wars, they didn't sit and wait. They didn't hide in silence. Why should we? I took the letter back, folding it carefully, slowly. "They fought with action," I said. "Not with noise. And we will too. But not yet." Jason turned away, his breath sharp, his eyes wet. He didn't believe me anymore. The next day, whispers grew into something worse. Two men I'd never seen walked slowly past the trailer. They stopped at the fence, staring at the door. One tapped the wood post and muttered, "Tonight." Jason heard them too. He grabbed the box, holding it tight to his chest. His face was pale, his breath shallow. "Dad, they'll come. We can't wait. We have to run." I stood still, calm, steady. "They'll come," I said. "But silence holds longer than fear." Jason's voice rose, desperate now. No, Dad. Silence is what's killing us. You'll lose everything, me, this, all of it. He pushed past me, storming out into the yard. His voice cracked as he shouted into the night. You want proof? Come and see it. Neighbors' lights flicked on. Curtains shifted. Whispers grew into laughter, spreading fast in the dark. I pulled him back inside, locking the door behind us. The box was still in his arms, coins rattling inside. He looked at me, eyes wide, chest heaving. They know now. Everyone knows. And you're still silent. Jason broke the silence. The neighbors broke the night. Dalton broke his smile. Emily broke his trust. I broke nothing. The night after Jason shouted, the trailer wasn't quiet anymore. Whispers circled outside. Steps crunched in the dirt. Hands tested the lock. Jason sat with the box clutched to his chest. His eyes were wide, his breast shallow, his knuckles white. Dad, he whispered. They're coming. I stood by the door, steady, waiting. The voices grew louder. Tonight we take it. He's too weak to stop us. The knob rattled once, then again, harder. Jason flinched, coins clinking inside the box. I didn't move. By morning, the whispers spread across town. They almost had it. He's finished. Someone else will claim it soon. At the diner, Dalton sat in the corner, smiling. Emily sat beside him, her hand on his arm. Her mother's voice cut across the room. He's a failure. Always was. Always will be. The whole diner laughed. Jason dropped his fork and stood up fast. His voice shook when he shouted back. You don't know him. You don't know us. The room went silent, then louder laughter followed. Dalton leaned back in his chair, smirking. Sit down, boy. Before someone teaches you where you belong. Jason's fist shook, his face red with fury. I pulled him back, and we left in silence. That evening, I walked into Dalton's office. He looked up, surprise flashing before his smirk returned. Emily sat in the corner, arms crossed, waiting. Michael, Dalton said, leaning back in his chair. What do you want? To beg? I set a folder on his desk. Old letters. Copies of every coin, every date, every name. His smirk faded as his eyes scanned the papers. You kept this, he said slowly. You think anyone would believe you? I slid another paper across the desk. A bank account. In Jason's name. Every document stamped, signed, sealed. Emily leaned forward, her voice sharp. You can't. I cut her off with silence. Just one look. She stopped. Dalton reached for the folder, but I pulled it back. This doesn't belong to you, I said. Then I stood and walked out. Jason waited outside, his hands trembling. What did you do, Dad? Protected it, I said. For you. By the weekend, the laughter stopped. Neighbors turned away when we passed. The diner went quiet when we entered. Her mother closed her blinds and didn't open them again. Dalton never came back. Emily never called. The whispers died faster than they spread. Jason still carried a coin in his pocket, tight in his palm. But he stopped asking why I stayed silent. He finally understood. On Sunday, he placed the box on the table. His voice was calm this time. Dad, we won. I folded another letter carefully, sealing it in its envelope. The war inside those words was over long ago. The war outside was over now, too. They wanted noise. They wanted proof. They wanted power. They wanted blood. But I gave them silence. And silence was louder.